Hey guys, if you're one of the thousands of people that love Sarasota, Florida, but potentially want a little bit more laid-back environment, still be very coastal, have good schools, a little bit more of an eclectic overall feel, then this video could be a great fit for you. Today, I'm gonna completely break down A to Z guide Venice, Florida. I get real deep here, so please stick around and hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the channel, the ultimate Sarasota, Florida relocation guide, the smartest way to move to and invest in the entire state of Florida. I am Adam Hancock, your host. Please subscribe to this channel if you enjoy this video. I'll put a button right here. It really helps us out a lot. Please also scroll down just a bit. Check out my description box. I put timestamps for all the important sections in the video. You can physically click them and hop around. Very helpful there. There's also helpful links. I have downloadable guides. I have a once a week handwritten newsletter by myself, so a ton of stuff in there. And please also, last but not least, if you are buying, transacting, you know anyone that is in the Sarasota, Florida area and you would like help from me and my team, please reach out directly. I'll try to put my information right here. It'll also be at the end of the video. Thank you very much, and without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay, to be fair with your time, I'm gonna first give you a game plan of what you're in for in this video, and then we'll get started. So the first thing I wanna talk about is location. So this is very important about how people make a decision. We're gonna go macro down in that exact thought process. So the first thing is to talk about Venice as it exists in the state of Florida in the general area, airports, major cities surrounding, etc. And more importantly, we're gonna drill into how it matters in Sarasota as a whole. All of these fringe cities have a value proposition as it exists to the area, which gives you much deeper context. We're going to hash through all of that. Secondly, we're going to talk about where to live, the neighborhoods, what's new, the Welland Parks of the world, North Venice, South Venice, the Northport fringes, the coastal Venice Island, beach living, the condos, that whole thing. Then we're going to talk about what to do. The major downtown district, the beaches, how they're different than Sarasota, what's the advantages, what's the differences, going south from Venice, going north from Venice. We're going to talk about all of that kind of stuff. Then we're going to talk about a very important one, schools. This has a great school district. We're going to talk about the 4-year-old and under. We're going to talk about the primary schools. We're going to talk about the secondary education schools, and we're going to talk about the private and charter. And then finally, we're going to talk about everything else, the business environment, the economics, the healthcare scene, everything else you want to know. And by the end of this video, my goal is to give you a full comprehensive guide. We're going to go in that order. I hope you enjoy, and let's get started. Okay, number one on this list, location. Okay, first up, Venice in the state of Florida is obviously a Gulf Coast city that sits right below Sarasota. So in the macro of Florida and what's important, if you're relocating and you have ties to the area, it puts you about an hour and a half to Tampa. It puts you 2.5 hours to Orlando. It puts you just 1 hour to Fort Myers. So it's good if you have inclinations to go south. It also puts you, if you're 1 hour from Fort Myers, that means you're an hour and a half from Naples, which sits here. And then even if you're shooting to West Palm or Miami, it puts you in that 3.5 range there. So pretty good locational benefits, in my opinion, to Florida as a whole. Now, I think in Sarasota it becomes even more interesting. So everything in my mind of when you're looking at stuff like this, if we zoom in a little bit here, Venice is here. Everything in my mind is all of these cities kind of are an offshoot of what the value proposition of the city, like I mentioned earlier. So what Venice is Sarasota's southern neighbor. Most people are considering, now it is in Sarasota County, but most people are considering Sarasota's area, the Sarasota beaches, the Sarasota downtown, the Sarasota lifestyle. Venice is an offshoot of that. If you're coming to Sarasota, you have a couple options. You could go south to be on the fringes to Venice, and then the reason that Venice is popular is because of Sarasota's proximity. The reason that Englewood is popular because it's below Venice. So you're getting further south, north, or east on the Gulf Coast. West is all water. So further means you should get some sort of locational benefit because you're going to lose out to some sort of like landed proposition of the city. So that's the same with going east. Northport is to Venice, as Englewood is to Venice. Englewood is to Venice, and then Venice is to Sarasota. It's the same idea. So the north version of that is coastal Bradenton. That's not in Lakewood Ranch yet. And then you go east to Lakewood, east of the interstate in Sarasota and South Sarasota. And then like a version of going south before you hit Venice would be your Palmer Ranch. So you kind of get the idea here. So Venice, the value of going south versus north to do this. Venice is a very mature kind of old school Florida vibe. It's very coastal. You kind of sit right here. It's where the barrier islands end for the beaches. So if you see here, you see Barrier Island, Barrier Island, Barrier Island, all Siesta Key, Longboat, Anna Maria, all barrier islands. There's Bay, then there's Barrier Island, then there's Gulf. But you see as soon as you get to Venice, boom, Barrier Island's gone. That general, what puts you way closer to the beach proximity-wise, it feels that way. So the whole town, the downtown is sitting on the water. It feels very coastal. The whole kind of downtown district feels that way. And in my mind, a lot of it is because of that little change there. So that's interesting. Now, if you go north, you're like, I like going north instead of south. Then what you hit a very different vibe. So very coastal still, but what Bradenton is Bradenton's a weird enigma. It's very large, but you have the airport and you have a lot more of an urban evolution of the housing. So where Venice is a lot more like laid back, kind of a lot of condos, a lot of retirement. It was way older, getting way younger, but that was the history of it. So it's just more of like a old school kind of boating, laid back retirement feel. Bradenton's, which is becoming cooler, is a little choppier. Just the housing values to each other. It's just it's a weird spot, and it's very close to then like world-class beaches, but you're not going to feel the same going north as you're going south. And then the other alternative is to go east, which then loses coastal proximity. So by going east to Lakewood Ranch or east in any way in this direction, that would be kind of the value proposition in my mind to a Venice, is by going south, remaining very, very close proximity to the coast, but by losing, it's great on its own outright, and we're going to get deeper into that, but by losing the feel of like downtown Sarasota, Lido Beach, Siesta Key in theory, then people would view going south as like getting further. Downtown Venice is 45 minutes one way to downtown Sarasota, which is north of town, way up here. Then some people would view that as a sacrifice. So because of that, you generally save a little bit of cost. It's getting a little bit more, it's more meritocracy in the latest stage, but a little bit of cost. And you get some benefit by making that sacrifice. So following that train of thought, if hopefully that was articulate enough, following that train of thought is very important in my mind for this kind of discussion. That's why I care about location. We're going to get more into the fun, pretty stuff here soon, but I think locational economic view is how you should look at this thing. And let's move to section number 2. Okay, number 2 on our list, and possibly the most important to people, where to live in Venice, Florida. Okay. So the best way to look at this, in my humble opinion, is a little bit different than Lakewood Ranch. So we're looking at a city here, a mature city, very different location on the map, and it's not a master plan suburb as a whole. So you can't just take a bunch of neighborhoods and say, this is the history and this makes perfect sense and they're located here. We have to look at this and separate where they sit on a map, use zip code a lot, and just a general area. We're going to look at the sales. I'm going to talk north to south, and we'll hash out all this kind of stuff. So I'm going to start here with Venice Island. Now, Venice Island is downtown Venice, the main historic district. This main zip code covers the island. It does bleed a little bit into this area. But again, this is your true downtown. It's also the closest to Venice and Casperson Beach. So you got true downtown living, way more laid back than your urban, way more laid back than your more upscale downtown Sarasota. So a little bit more affordable, but true downtown living. I'm going to hop to a model real quick here. So I built you guys another model. Check out the description below if you want to mess around with this yourself. Absolutely free. Just going to trade you for an email address to download. But this model right here, downtown Venice covers this zip code right here. So you're going to have in any downtown area, this one again a little bit more affordable, but you're going to have a broad range of really expensive beach housing, and then you're going to have, this one actually has some affordable. I've done several condos there in the 300,000s. You got to look at the fees, but pretty interesting. A lot of snowbird, a lot of Canadians, a lot of Northeasterners because of the affordability. So if you like the laid back Venice, affordability definitely is a little bit of a perk there, but you can kind of see the broad scale here. Pelican Point bleeds off the island, but the broad scale here, what it offers, you can see what I mean. Real quick, this model, just for instruction-wise, I think zip codes are very important for Venice, so I threw in zip codes. This does the subdivision. You can double-click on this to get all the addresses, all the detail. Price point, bucket, you can click condominiums only, single family. This, and it also gives you the month sold. I have 12 months of data in here, so just real quick on that, that's my piece there. Okay, so Venice Island is one. So Venice Island, keep that in your mind. Number 2 area I would look at is, see Venice Island was here, is South Venice. Now this bleeds way into, like, you know, it's easy to go from Venice to bleeding into Englewood to the south and Northport to the east. But South Venice, nonetheless, the stuff in my model only considers the actual Venice city limits. So South Venice is one of the highest selling areas, overall volume in the last 12 months. And you can see kind of the shape of the land here. Is Venice Beach is up here and Casperson, the Chartreuse Beach is there. You see how it bleeds in here? So South Venice actually has a ferry that you can have a membership to that actually takes you to the beach on the ferry because of how the land is shaped. Generally here the feel is going to be, it feels like very much like a mature old school boating community. There's loose restrictions. People can do 8-foot fences in a lot of areas that run all the way up to the street. You can put your boat in your yard. You can do more, more mature, just kind of, if you want to do new construction, you can buy a piece of land and do urban infill building. There is a lot of septic and well there, something to consider. But again, in that area, it's much more loose. It's kind of like South Sarasota is, but much more affordable. So that's South Venice. I wanted to mention that, and you can see just simply on the model here, like very high selling. The third area I think a lot of people kind of hot on their mind would be this Welland Park development. Now Welland Park, people get mad at me and say, well, Welland Park's in Northport, not Venice, and all this kind of stuff. But in actuality, I mean, it's a weird mirage of how Welland Park has materialized, right? It was the West Villages, you'll see that name a lot, and then they branded it into this whole thing that looks real sexy online, but it doesn't really feel like a Lakewood Ranch in person. It's going to be extremely nice, but it does feel way more like pieced together over time. Like Grand Palm, they've been building that for 10 years. And then you have all these new communities, but then they're mixed with like Boca Royale, the golf community that's in Englewood, 20 minutes away, but it's still considered Welland. It's a concept that they're trying to do, and it's going to be centered around a downtown district that is right off of 41. It's going to be super nice, and the downtown district is closest to Grand Paradiso and the Island Walk, if people have heard of that. But Welland Park is going to give you kind of like a junior version of what Lakewood Ranch would be. It's something that you can really get your head around. It's a good, at least to use as fodder for how to shop the area. It's interesting. The one thing to consider with Welland, and you can see, here I'll hop over here real quick. You can see like Island Walk in the top sales, Grand Palm, Grand Paradiso. You can see the volume there. A lot of people really enjoy that. Now, one thing real quick, Welland and Venice in general is not going to offer the certain upscale builders that some of Lakewood Ranch does. Like there's not like a stock development. There's not a lot of that really upscale stuff around like the Waterside and Toll Brothers and that kind of thing. There's not that same version. A lot of this is kind of like Neil and a lot of that kind of level. So that's just food for thought there if you really enjoy some of the upscale stuff. Venice is probably not the move. But the thing with Welland is what you got to consider is it's close to the coast, but it is far south. So that's one thing I think that divides, is that if you're in Venice, it's not hard to stay close to the coast if you follow kind of this idea. But north to south does change, right? So one thing to consider is south, like Venice, North Englewood, Northport, too far from downtown Sarasota and Sarasota stuff. I mean, Venice Island alone is 45 minutes one way to downtown Sarasota. So if you can be close to the coast, but you don't want to completely lose Sarasota, then staying up in the north or even in Nokomis or in Osprey is something to think about. So that's just, I just want you guys to be aware of where that sits on a map. But again, that is by far your biggest swath of new construction available. So I wanted to mention that. Okay, and the last one I wanted to mention was this area. So I mean, there's a lot of like in between, but I think North Venice is also interesting. So there's some in North Venice where like technically you can do Venice on just like Lakewood Ranch and Bradenton. You can do Venice on your address, or you can call it Nokomis or whatever. But in my model, again, I took out everything that wasn't actually city limits of Venice in their address. But North Venice is interesting. So North Venice does what I just described with Welland Park. North Venice is here, right? And your Welland Park's a little lower. So you have some options up here. Like this is where Venice Woodlands is. This is where Aria with Asneal, Silo, Vincenza, Toscana Isles, DR Horton. That's where that is. But what I like about that is if you, again, super close to the coast still, right? So you're not changing that element. That's different about Venice. But what you are is you're gaining a little bit easier access. I mean, it's a couple miles, but a little easier access to Sarasota. So that's how I would divide the town. If you're coming here and like you want to be like 3 hours, how do I look at it, right? So you need to be aware of like all the new construction going on. You could build here. You can build most of the buildings here and here. You can also do urban infill and some creative stuff. Coast's not a problem anymore, so you're not doing like windward versus like deep Lakewood Ranch. All of it's coastal, so that solves that problem. Not as high end, you need to consider that. If you like to golf, there's options for that. It's just generally old school Sarasota County feel, much more mature. So that's kind of the rundown. Again, please check out this model. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I really tried to build it in a way where you guys could function alone. I really hope it's helpful, and all the detail is in there. So please do not hesitate. I really hope this section was helpful, and let's hop to our next one. Okay, third on our list, what to do in Venice, Florida. I'm going to focus on 3 main areas that will give you the comprehensive value proposition of what people would consider a benefit to living in this area. First on the list has to be the downtown Venice, Florida district. This very historic district that's also considered Venice Island is really unique to any area in Florida, in my opinion, because there's no barrier islands that separate the town from the coast, making the entire thing feel very eclectic and charming. It's home to over 100 unique and independently owned stores and restaurants, home to one of the nation's largest community theaters, the Venice Theater, who maintains a full performance schedule throughout the year. The Venice Art Center rotates over 10 exhibits throughout the calendar year. Venice Beach Pavilion hosts musicians on nearly every night of the week. This area really takes pride in its historic significance, with an entire city being planned on the National Register of Historic Places, which is very unique. And it's very bicycle and pedestrian family friendly. Just the overall scene is extremely, extremely pleasant. Okay, number 2 on the list, definitely can't go without mentioning the beaches of Venice, Florida. This area offers 14 miles of coastal variety. You have people-only beaches, you have beaches that accommodate your dogs, you have beaches that you can hunt for shark's teeth, a little bit for everybody in the family. I'm gonna run through the 3 major ones real quick. The first one's Venice Beach. Venice Beach is very close to the downtown district. You can walk from the main downtown hub to the Venice Beach. It's definitely a favorite spot in that area. And it has a reef that also lies only a quarter mile offshore, so it's good for everybody that enjoys that kind of sea life, scuba diving, all this kind of thing. Secondly, you have Casperson Beach, which is more nice and secluded, really kind of a nature lover's paradise. The southern 2/3 of this beach has been left in its natural state with freshwater and saltwater marshes, mangroves, and tidal flats. And thirdly, you have Brohar Beach, which is near the 700-foot-long Venice fishing pier and provides easy access to that beach. At Southern Brohar Beach, this is where you find the Paul Park, which boasts a fenced play yard for all your furry friends, and that leads to a wide open 100-yard section of just a dog-only beach. There are even dog showers and drinking fountains for your pets. Okay, and the third major thing I wanted to mention for things to do in Venice, Florida is the trail and the outdoor park type of environment. Venice is an area that I would consider as a gem in that respect. When you take the value proposition of Sarasota County as a whole, going south in this direction gives you a little bit more of that. So you have about 14 great hiking trails, there's trails for runnings, and there's trails for viewing. I'm gonna run through them at kind of a top level perspective just to give you kind of a list to go off of. So Sleeping Turtle Trail has a north trail. You have the Legacy Trail, which runs all throughout town, and they're even opening up more areas for that throughout Sarasota. You have Jelks Preserve Trail. You have the Venetian Waterway Park Trail, which is a fan favorite. You have Deer Prairie Creek Loop. You have the Sleeping Turtle Preserve at the Southern Loop. You have the Myakka River and the Upper Myakka Lake Trail. You have the Shamrock Park, and you have Venetian Waterways. And then you have some in like Oscar Shear and Nokomis and Osprey as well. So plenty of that to go around if that's your thing. And that rounds out this section. Okay, our fourth one on this list, schools in Venice, Florida. Okay, let's first talk preschools in Venice, Florida. So from what I could find, there's about 20 or so notable preschools. My son's actually just turned 4, so we're about to hop into this world. There's a lot going on there, and then we're gonna reset the clock again in December with another one. But I'll throw a map up so you can kind of see how they're spread out a little bit. And then what I found through my research was there's a lot of schools online that start at kindergarten, but the online research shows, even the ratings and stuff show that they have a preschool element. And from what I can tell, a lot of them do not. So this is a list of 20 that I found that definitely do, and I can send you that whole list if you would like. But I want to point out, just for this exercise, for brevity's sake, I want to point out 3 notables that were way higher rated than anything else I could find, and then we'll hop over to primary schools. So number 1 was Venice Church of Nazarene Preschool, so I'll pop up the text here. Number 2 was Children's First, and there's a couple locations also very highly rated. And then Grace United Methodist Preschool, I think it's combined with a church, is also really highly rated. So those 3 were by far and away like way higher rated than anything else. So there was 1Z, 2Z reviews on everything else, and these ones had a big jump. So food for thought there. And then, in the preschool and this kind of more privatized sector of schooling at this age, you could do Lakewood Ranch, which I mentioned in a previous video that has a bunch there. So check that out. I'll link that at the end of the video. And then you could also there's Nokomis and there's South Sarasota. So a lot of options, a lot of religious options and all this throughout the town. And then you could focus on primary where you live if that's better for you. So I hope that helps, and let's jump to our next section. Okay, now let's get into the nitty-gritty and talk to most people's concerns when they reach out to us, the primary schools. So we're going to talk K through high school, and we're going to talk public and public charter, and then talk about private. So we're going to start with elementary schools here. You can see, so you have a pretty strong, the general theme in Sarasota County is if you stay to the northeast or go south of downtown, you're pretty solid overall. It's really hard to get into a bad district public-wise, which is nice, and why the county ranks so high overall. Venice is no different than that. So elementary school, you have a nice kind of flank of north to south, so you have 2 9s out of 10. So Venice Elementary sits right on the island. This is Venice Beach, downtown Venice, Casperson. And then you have another 9 out of 10 Taylor Ranch that sits to the south, which is that's Cool Today Park. That's the Welland Park, Northport, Englewood border there. And then your 7 out of 10 is Island Village, which is a public charter. I believe that goes all the way through high school. And then Garden Elementary is your 4 out of 10. It sits right in the middle there. So pretty solid overall there for elementary. So then you get to middle, we stay pretty strong, which is nice because a lot of middle schools drop off in a lot of areas. So you have Venice Middle, which sits down here, which is a 6 out of 10. You have Island Village, which is that same one I mentioned earlier. And then you have Student Leadership, and you have Sky. Student Leadership would be on the island as well. And then Sky would be where Venice Gardens is. And then let's hop to high school, which is a little bit simpler in most markets, just being the fewer number. So the main high school is Venice Senior High. That's what most people are going to think of, kind of how people view Lakewood High or Sarasota High, whatever. It's a 6 out of 10. I believe that's the same ranking as Lakewood Ranch. And then what you have in Sarasota is you have, just food for thought, you have Riverview High, which I believe is the highest ranking. It's either a 7 or 8 out of 10, depending on the timing, which is just north of South Sarasota, just north of Palmer Ranch. You have Booker, which is a 3 to 4 out of 10, which is north of downtown. And then you have Sarasota High, which sits in the middle of downtown Sarasota. Lakewood sits way northeast. Kind of get the theme here, but Venice Senior High, most people view very high ranking for sports. They'd also view a high ranking just in general. Most people really enjoy it. And it sits right on the middle of the island, which is unique to a lot of places in the country. And then Island Village, of course. Let me hop to private schools real quick here, just to give you the full circle. Now I'm going to look at everything. So you have Venice Christian would be a main one. You see how many there are, and they flank. This is where you could have like kind of religious-based schools. You have Venice Christian, you have SDA, you have the Cathedral School, International Montessori. So you kind of get the drift here. It's very similar in a lot of areas. But there'll be options there as well. So plenty of school options from preschool all the way through high. And most people you talk to would view Venice as a very high ranking area for schools in general. I hope that assists, and let's move to the next section. Okay, and our fifth and final bucket for our all-inclusive guide to Venice, Florida is my catch-all, everything else you want to know. Okay, I'm going to mention 2 pillars that should be important to a lot of people's different relocation to an area. That being healthcare and economics, business, job environment. So Venice is somewhat simplistic in this manner. So from a hospital standpoint, we have 2 notable mentionings. The first one already exists. It's Venice Regional Bayfront Health. That's a 312-bed acute care facility that is part of a regional network of more than 7 hospitals. It had 70 clinics kind of running up and down the I-75 corridor there. So you'll see the Bayfront Health branding in a lot of places. The second one's an interesting new option that started construction a couple of years ago. That is the main Sarasota Memorial Hospital, which is the top-rated hospital in Sarasota, being right in the downtown district. They're having a Venice campus being built. It's 82 foot tall, 365,000 square foot hospital. It started in, like I said, a couple of years ago in April 2019. It's still on track to finish in fall of this year, 2021. And that expansion is going to bring a physician base further south in town, because the main one is north of downtown at the moment, or right in the middle of downtown, but north of Sarasota. And as that pushes the medical staff a little further south, a lot of people think that's poising it to build a hospital in the Northport area. So that's kind of, there's a ton of like regional little facilities all throughout to get the, from prenatal to pediatrics to home health. There's a lot of that in the area as well. But these are the 2 notable hospitals. From a job and economic standpoint, you have You have a pretty laid-back retirement-based town. This is not a major city. Sarasota, even as a city itself, isn't massive. So, and this is an offshoot of that. So you're not going to have a ton of time. You're not really relocating a lot of times to Venice, except for the hospitals, for job-wise. But I did want to mention some options. So one major headquarters that is in North Venice is Tervis Tumbler. I'm not sure if a lot of people knew that. It's the one that makes the cups. And then your secondary job opportunity would probably be related to the hospital. So Venice Regional is a major employer. The new one's going to be a major employer. They're going to have to build infrastructure to support that. So you're going to have everything that comes with that landscape. And then you got a couple like top-rated manufacturers that are just employers for folks in town. Southern Spring and Absolute Aluminum are two of them. So I just wanted to mention that briefly. And there's probably a lot of cool things entrepreneurial you could do in the fitness space, in the hospitality space, and all that kind of thing throughout the downtown district. And you can of course commute up into Sarasota city limits as well. So that wraps up this section. Now let's hop to the conclusion, and I'm going to give you a bunch of helpful links there. All right, guys, that is a wrap on our all-inclusive guide to Venice, Florida. Hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to subscribe if you did. Please look at the description box below for timestamps, for helpful resources, for links, for the downloadable guides. We have multiple of them. Thank you once again for returning to the ultimate Sarasota, Florida relocation guide. Please reach out to me and my team if you need anything at all. We would love to help you in any way we can, and we'll see you on the next one.